What's a good word, everyone? I'm Kenny Varner, the owner of SportsHaveBalls.com. I've been looking so forward as I've been researching this conference here on the end of June, June 26th. We're going to look at every team, their win totals. This is so intriguing, from the top dog, literally dogs in Georgia, to the team that's a mess in Vandy, to Florida's death November death. You'll see everything that we're talking about. Now, before I get started, I would ask you guys to check out my YouTube channel. We got a lot of sports betting content. Subscribe. We try to go almost every single day, adding content daily. SportsHaveBalls.com is the name of my site. We have some exciting stuff coming in the near future over at my website. We do not sell picks, and I want to get that out there. Although earlier today I did make a video on a bet that I made last night, and you can go see that anytime. It was on Facebook Live. It'll be up on here on YouTube shortly. So, as we do the overview, Georgia over 10.5 minus 130 in this conference, losing less than 2 games. Texas, under 10.5 minus 175. It shows you who is favored to begin with. Under 9.5 minus 140 for Bama. When we're going to go through all of these, we got the 6th ranked team in the country at over 9.5 wins at minus 135. Florida, I would almost open up that book and look at that. It was that November they got with no weeks off. Crazy. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about why they're at 4.5 wins. And we're going to get everyone in between. You didn't hear your favorite team in the SEC, you will hear it in this. So we're going to start. We'll start with the top dog, Georgia Bulldogs. Carson Beck is back. 4 offensive linemen are back. The secondary is replacing three starters with probably 3 more NFL prospects. This is not about Georgia talent level like it is for a lot of teams as we go down the list here in the SEC. This is about their schedule. So as we take a first look at their schedule, they play at a neutral site. I know it's in Atlanta, so maybe it'll be a 60-40 split, but I believe both teams get the same amount of tickets that go, and Clemson will travel. Clemson always travels. So opening, they got Clemson in a neutral, the 15th, 14th ranked team in the country, depending what poll you look at, against the team with the most talent in football. I've seen people say this in an elimination game, but you gotta get up on your 12-team playoffs. Clemson wins the ACC, they're still in 2 losses, 3 losses. It won't matter if they win the conference. This will get Clemson at their sharpest mentally, so they will be really working for this game. I think this is a Georgia should be favored by a touchdown or more. I like their chances there. Tennessee Tech, at Kentucky. The thing with Georgia is, it's really hard to explain. Just like with Alabama with Saban for most of his time, you have to really finish them off. Ask Missouri a couple years ago. Oh, we had them. We should have won. I hate woulda, coulda, shoulda won. They had an opportunity, but to actually knock Georgia off and beat them is a whole different story. Hanging tough. The game is close in the 4th quarter, but actually putting Georgia away is just things I don't think that the medium teams can do to Georgia like they might be able to do to LSU or Tennessee, because they have that it factor, and that it factor could be like NFL talent. So when I look at Kentucky, I'm like, okay. Then they have a week off. Now, as we look into this, both teams have the week off for September 28th when they go to Bama. We will talk about Bama actually, in a little bit. Bama could be down a little bit. We know this, but you got a new coach. You got people transferring out. I see them at number 7 in the country, which, kind of like Michigan. Yeah, they're ranked high too. But is it just because of past performance? The talent gap? There might be a talent gap between Georgia and Alabama. And then after they go to Alabama, Auburn and Mississippi State come in. These are teams that are 7.5 win total, and then the second to the worst team in Mississippi State. We'll get to them a lot later, and how bad they are. Then a big, you could say that the Mississippi State game. I like to gain more knowledge on point spreads too, because you got Georgia going to Texas on October 19th after playing Mississippi State at home. There's not going to be focus or game plan for Mississippi State. That's just going to be a win, and then they go to Texas. So I would caution people about giving big points with Mississippi State. Then they're off, and then they get Florida. Florida starting their massive November schedule where they could be hurt by then. The game is neutral. It's a rival game, but a team lined at 4.5, no matter what the schedule is not going to take out Georgia. Could it be a look ahead? I don't think it's a look ahead because it is a rival, the biggest outdoor cocktail party. So I don't think it's a look ahead to at Mississippi at number 6. And we know, can Mississippi step up and take the big boys out? They can take the medium big boys out, but can they actually go to the next level? That is going to be the question this year for Ole Miss, and we'll talk about them later. Tennessee, always tough, going to come in. By that time, we'll see the mental state of Tennessee. I think Georgia will take care of that. Then UMass and Georgia Tech, win-win. So when I look at over 10.5 minus 130, I don't see any value because you go, can you see 2 losses? I mean, Clemson, maybe they're better than I think. At Alabama, at Texas, at Ole Miss. They got 3 teams, and it only takes 2 losses to get them to go under this total. I'm not one that bets against the best teams in football when it comes to actually winning the game. So, although it might be one that I'll stay away from, can you get a 10 at minus 120 at 110 at another book? That's what I would kind of look for, saying they won't lose 3 games. 2 games in an SEC title, yeah, it is possible. So that's what you got. And by the way, all these win totals are with no postseason, just the 12 regular season games. I want to make sure everyone knows that. Now, Texas, showing that all 10.5s are not created equal, under 10.5 is minus 175. So it's a huge favorite for them to lose 2 games. Over 10.5 plus 145. And what these numbers tell me, when you see an under 10.5 minus 175, maybe there's a minus 10, maybe there's a minus an under 9.5 at minus 110. Maybe there's over 10.5 at plus 145. Maybe there's an over 9.5. If you think, 2, but they're not going to lose 3. That's why it's important to shop around for these numbers. So let's look at Texas's schedule. Let's see. As I look at it as a glance, I don't think of it as a super tough schedule. But let's talk about, we know Ken Ewers is back, so that's great. The Porter wide receivers will replace all the receivers they have gone. That could be a question, but it looks like they did their job. But number 1, 4 offensive line returning starters. Now, their DeAndre Sweat is gone, and he was all everything. We should all know that he was all everything. This defense is still going to be talented. Are they worthy of their top 3 ranking? I believe so. I believe so when it's all said and done. So as we look at the schedule, we got to notice they don't play Bama. And that's not as huge as it has been in the past. And I don't see a Mississippi. I think that could be even more. So they start with Colorado State, fine. They go to Michigan, So already Colorado State, look-ahead spot. But with look-ahead spots, I don't like believing that there's a look-ahead spot during your first game. So you say Texas is really getting ready for Michigan. They still want to get playing that first game and playing well. So I wouldn't be jumping on like a Colorado State because Texas is looking past them as much as I would later in the season. So at Michigan, we're going to talk about Michigan a little bit later. Oh, we're going to talk about Michigan in the Big Ten. We've done a video on a Michigan Georgia Syracuse video where we talk about Michigan a little bit, and I believe they're going to be significantly down. They got offensive linemen out. They got 5 people going at quarterbacks. Them at number 10, I think Texas will be a significant enough favorite. Now, is it a game you can lose? Yes, you could always lose against a pretty good team on the road. So you got to take that into effect. Then you got Texas San Antonio, Louisiana Monroe, and then one of the worst teams in the SEC, Mississippi State, all coming in. I believe that's going to be 5 wins at least. I mean, at least 4. But I mean, then the best thing is they have the week off, and then they play the Oklahoma in Dallas, which is obviously neutral field. A neutral field rivalry game. So Texas is not looking past Oklahoma. Now, will they be beat up a little bit after playing Oklahoma? Because the next week they're at home again. The Oklahoma-Georgia double. They play Oklahoma in a neutral, and then they got Georgia. They will not be looking past Oklahoma, even if Oklahoma struggles early, even if Oklahoma is not great. It's a rivalry. They will be there. Will they have enough left in the tank for number 1 Georgia the next week? I think that's a legit question. I know Georgia's the most talented team out there, but Texas can definitely play with them. At Vandy, they are a mess. We'll get to them later. Then they're off, and then they get Florida. Florida, this will be after Florida plays Georgia. They play Texas. Good luck with that. Florida comes into Texas. Florida is a name right now and not a tough team. Then they go to Arkansas, come back for Kentucky, and then at A&M can be a tricky one because A&M is going to be a bit of a rival. It's going to be A&M Super Bowl, and A&M right now is lined at 8.5 wins. So when I look at under 10.5 minus 175, George, I mean, I could definitely see 10 wins here. I mean, at Michigan, I'm not. And with Oklahoma, so maybe Georgia, maybe Texas A&M. So if I could get like an over 9.5, if I could get an over 9 at even money, it's on there. They're not losing 4 of these games here. But when you look at it at Michigan, you look at Oklahoma, which I will show you how down they're going to be. I don't see a lot of losses here for Texas. I think 2 would be the max. So I would shop around for a number because these are all the numbers I have right here are Bet Online. So you can look at Bovada, especially in the future when these lines start coming out and start getting pounded into shape. You can find some good numbers. All right, now who we're looking at? Big bag at Alabama. Under 9.5 is minus 140. How many times have you ever seen Alabama, of all teams, favored to lose 3 games? Over 9.5 plus 110. And you could say with good reason, although I don't, I see they do miss Mississippi. They get Georgia, Tennessee, Missouri, which we'll talk about, LSU. But let's look at this. Kalen DeBoer is coming in. Was he just a really good fit at Washington? There's not a huge track record. Yes, he was great at Washington. That just might have been a better fit. 40 players, 40 have gone to the NFL or portal from Alabama. Alabama was a who cares, we have NFL talent. 40 is a lot, and to have them go through the portal also, I don't know. But I will say that Milroe is a great fit for this coach. So I really like that. But I will tell you right now that this is not an Alabama offensive line. And that really scares me in terms of them winning 10 or going to the SEC title game. The NFL, they have the NFL pass rushers. So I have questions right here. How really talented are they? We know they're talented. I mean, they're SEC, they're 9.5, but how? Is there that big difference? And has the gap been closed between the Tennessees of the world, the LSUs of the world? That is a very legit question when it comes to Bama. Now, as we look at the beginning of their schedule, I see Western Kentucky, South Florida come in. I'm not worried about that with an Alabama getting their feet wet. I kind of like that because then they go to Wisconsin, who is a 7.5 win team. Going to Wisconsin can always be tricky. You're going halfway across the country. Then they are off, and then they get the Dogs. Boom. Should be fun. Both teams have the week off, as we discussed after we went through Georgia. And Georgia, very few times I will talk about revenge, but this is a team that knocked Georgia out of the playoffs by beating them in the SEC title game. And I have a little thing on a tangent, rant alert as they call it. It's so funny that they put that at the end of the rankings last year, they put Florida State at number 5. It's so funny that they were undefeated. I know the reasoning was because of injuries and such like that. And I understand throughout the whole year rankings don't matter. But they were put at number 5 last year, pretending like they almost made the 4. Why do I bring this up? Because I think it's hilarious that Florida State was put at number 5. Yes, Florida State, undefeated, without a quarterback, with a lot of players, with some injuries, should they have made it, more people would have played. But they thought an undefeated Florida State team was better than Georgia, who went undefeated and then lost to Alabama in the SEC title game. Florida State really should have been 8-9. If they were keeping them out of the playoffs, they should have been 8-9, not even close. But that's just a little tangent. Anyway, Alabama, after Georgia, they go to Vandy. Then they come home for South Carolina. Vandy's, South Carolina, we'll talk about them a little later. At Tennessee, number 15, that will definitely be a tricky game. We know how much of a rival that can be, and we don't know Alabama. This is what when we have over these totals, I can eliminate teams. But I love going over. What do I think about these teams? Because after they go to Tennessee, Missouri comes in. And Missouri is a kind of a team that I don't trust to be consistently really good. But I think if Missouri's caught up to Alabama, that could be a tricky game. Then they're off. Then they go to LSU. And Missouri's right in the middle of Tennessee-LSU traditional rivals. Will Missouri still be 8th in the country? I doubt it. Well, no, I don't want to say that right now because we got to look at their schedule, which is the weakest SEC schedule I've ever seen in my life. But before we get to that, that could actually be a sandwich game, that Missouri game at home. After they go to LSU, which is no cakewalk there, they have Mercer. Who cares? Now, why I say who cares? Because they were an FCS school who doesn't make the playoffs. So they're sandwiched in between going at Oklahoma. Is that a look-ahead spot? How good is Oklahoma? If Oklahoma's got 6 wins, they don't care. They just care about Auburn. And another thing is if they're 8-3, 9-3, all their dreams are dashed. They only care about Auburn coming into Alabama at the end of the year. I see under 9.5 at -140. That would be a little bit juicy, but if you think they have at least 3 losses in them, I could see it. But this is one I don't have a good feeling on because I want more information. So we're going to find out more information so we can bet on or against Alabama going forward. I did a lot of betting the last couple years, 3-4 years of Saban, even a little bit before it, where I would just put Alabama in a money line with a team I bet just to get every single one of my bets at plus money. And that worked. That's not going to work this year with Alabama. They're not definitely going to be Tennessee or Missouri or LSU. There's no, yes, they're going to win this game. They're not scary. All right, let's go to LSU now. As we look at LSU now, they're at under 9.5 minus 160, over 9.5 at plus 130. So this looks like it. You can get them at over 8.5, maybe at minus 110, minus 120. Again, shop out there. That is the key. Jaden Daniels is gone. Now we saw Nussmeier in the bowl game throw for 395. I think a big question is, can Brian Kelly take these guys to the next level with inexperienced center? They got a couple tackles coming back, but an inexperienced center. Was it Nussmeier takes over at quarterback? He did get to. I'm glad he played in the bowl game, so that is a good thing. And this team avoids Texas, Tennessee, and Georgia. That's pretty good. You avoid, the number 1 and number 3 teams in the country. That's always a good sign. Now, the big question was how bad their defense was. Their defense was god awful and got worse even against average offenses. Did they fix this through the portal? That's going to be the big question. That is why I don't think it's a bettable 8.5, 9.5. But I want to let you know, if you like it, that maybe an 8.5 at a different book would be better, or would be better to go over under for you. Well, let's look at their schedule. They open up on September 1st, a Sunday, big time game. LSU takes on USC. USC is borderline top 25. I believe they're 25 in the ESPN preseason rankings. We got LSU at 15. The game is in Vegas. I think you're going to see a lot. Having Nussmeier make a start there. Now we know USC's defense was awful last year too. So do we look for a shootout? Well, we're going to have to go through USC in the Big Ten. Still weird to say. And then, so after USC, they get Nichols. Nichols is a borderline FCS playoff team. Won't be a problem. It's going to be their Super Bowl, but then they go to South Carolina, a team they should handle. But what I love about the SEC, unlike the Qs, is these places like South Carolina, Arkansas, even Vanderbilt, but more like Kentucky, Mississippi State. These fans come out and are loud, and they make it a home atmosphere, even if their team's not good. And that's, and then you get things rolling. You never know. You get a couple turnovers. But they go to South Carolina. Then they come home and play UCLA. Now, UCLA is lined at under 5.5 minus 180. Not supposed to be a good team. South Alabama, a better team in their league. We have to see if they still are. So you look at that. Maybe they'll be favored in all 5 games. Definitely 4 games they'll be favored. They get that USC game. Maybe they can get that 5th win. Then Ole Miss. After a week off, October 5th, they play Ole Miss, number 6 in the country. And they got Ole Miss coming into LSU. That's going to be a real treat. We'll see. We'll really get to see how LSU matches up. Arkansas is next. You could argue, I guess, that's a sandwich game, especially if Texas A&M gets off to a really good start at Arkansas, who I don't expect much from. We'll get to them later. Then at Texas A&M. So you could mark that as a sandwich game. I like to mark sandwich games and look ahead spots and all that before the season, cross them out, and see which ones are real and which ones are not. But that's the work that goes in. Then they got a week off, so they got 2 weeks to prepare for Alabama, who comes in, who LSU might actually be favored at that point. But again, you don't have Jaden Daniels. Nussmeier is a question. Brian Kelly to the next level is a question. Bama comes in. They go to Florida, which will be Florida's 3rd crazy game. I think Florida will be all beat up, and I would mark that as a win. Vandy will be a win, and then Oklahoma. Now Oklahoma is talented. We'll go over them in a little bit, but to see this team winning 8 games, I mean, the thing is, you have your possible losses, and they're probably not going to lose all their possible losses, but are they going to get, upset along the way? A UCLA, Arkansas catching them in a trap. And if their defense doesn't make the strides, Katie bar the doors, they can go 6-6. And that's not my prediction on them. I'm just saying these are big time questions that can keep you on or off the bat. Now we look at Ole Miss. Now, is this Mississippi team going to step up? Over 9.5 wins at -135. So max 2 losses is what is being said for this team. You could probably get, over 10 losses, you get a -110. So -135 might be pretty good. Now these are bet online numbers. Under 9.5 plus 105. So what do we look for this? Oh, that's a great stat for the schedule. But we'll get to Kiffin. Great offensive coach. Great portal came to be for them. Jackson Dart, huge that he's returning for them. He's been an assistant for 35 years roughly, and so that won't be a problem. 3 starters on the offensive line. What else do these guys want? Oh, you know what they want? They want all their receivers back. Boom, they got it. This defense was a pretty good defense, although they were pummeled by the Dogs in a 52-17 game. They got some holes to fill. Did they fill those holes with the portal? I'm thinking maybe they did. I think there's a reason they're going to be number 6 and seeing, can you go to the Dog level? Can you go to the former Bama level? Can you take the next step? And I think their schedule really sets up, even though they have to play the Dogs. But the way it sets up, I think it's if they're going to be what they want to be someday, this is the year. And this is why. Look at their first 5 games. 4 at home. They got Furman. Now, I will talk about the FCS because Furman's almost knocked off the Mighty Grizz in the playoffs in a wild game. So this was a good FCS team. This is a team in transition. They're doing their 2 transitional years, Furman is. So their quarterback, who was great against Montana, or was good, I should say, but he left. I think they had a lot of people transfer out. So I know this is number 16 against an FCS transition to FBS school, but I like looking at the little schools because a lot less games are shocking upsets to me as I watched it. A lot less shocking than what people pretend to be shocking upsets. Furman is not one of those teams, as they were good last year. Took my Mighty Grizz right here to the brink. But they are the shell of the team. They are a shell of a team of what they were last year. So, Middle Tennessee State, they're going to take care of. At Wake Forest, always tricky on a road game, but I don't believe that atmosphere of Wake Forest. I believe they were a 5-6 win team. You should be able to take care of them. Then you come back home and play Georgia Southern and Kentucky. Georgia Southern, a little bit used to winning, but you're Ole Miss. You think you're a national title contender. Kentucky, again, you think you're a national title contender. 5-0 with 4 of those at home. Now, let's see, 2 weeks to prepare. Yeah. Okay, now is where it gets a little tricky. Not only do you have a little bit of a sandwich game with going to South Carolina, like I said, these teams, their crowds show up. And this is not a ranked team. Your first ranked team is LSU the week after. So, let's say you're able to roll through, Prove you're a championship team. You're 6-0. The schedule and spot for October 12th is unfair, is awful for Ole Miss. Why? You've played, this will be the 7th week in a row that you've played without a break. Are you tired? Do you have some injuries? And not only is this your 7th week in a row that you played, LSU 2 weeks to prepare for this game. Mississippi has 7. Will be their 7th game in a row before they get a bye. When it gets to even 6, I don't like it. But you get to number 7 in a row without a week off. I don't care how great these kids are in shape. When you're playing the type of athlete LSU's going to have, and they're ranked 14th in the country, this is a very scary spot for me for Ole Miss. Now you might be able to lose a game or two and still get the SEC title game, but this one really is a really bad spot. But on the flip side, they got 2 weeks to prepare for Oklahoma and number 18 Oklahoma, who I don't think is in my mind being Oklahoma that we have known in the past. And even in the recent past, their defense has been no good. So I like them there. And then you got a sandwich spot with Arkansas. They go to Arkansas before Georgia comes in. They are not going to be looking at Arkansas. I believe Arkansas is not going to be a very good football team. Who knows if they're going to quit yet again this year, but that is a sandwich spot of all sandwich spots, and Arkansas Ole Miss, there's no rivalry, there's nothing there. They're gonna come out full force in Fayetteville. So, I mean, there's a sandwich spot. That's what upsets happen. That's why when someone says, "Oh my God, can you believe?" Yes, I can. The spot, the schedule, and even if they're not going to lose that game, file that in your mind for Arkansas plus the points as a possibility. Because with Georgia on deck, that's what they're focused on. Especially if they're undefeated going into that Arkansas game. Look out. Because then if they're 8-0, 7-1 or 8-0, going to Arkansas, they're going to be way overvalued and in a sandwich spot. But, yeah. Then Georgia. It's like, all right, put up or shut up. Couldn't beat Georgia, couldn't beat Bama. You're a really, really, really good football team, but are you going to make that next level? Here's your chance. Then they get a week. This is the funniest part. They get a week off, and then they go to Florida. Florida, game number 4 of their gauntlet of top 10 teams. This is the third top 6 team they'll be playing, preseason top 6 team that they'll be playing in a 5-week span. I count this as an Ole Miss win. I count it. You see Florida, it's a 4.5 win total. November tells you why. And we'll look at their schedule in the future here in this video. Mississippi State, yes, it's a rivalry game. It is at home. It's not a neutral field. It's at home. They should take care of business. Ole Miss is a big-time prove-it-to-me team this year. There's no reason they shouldn't be 6-0 before the LSU game. There's no reason they should have more than one loss going into the Georgia game. But if they lose to LSU and lose to Georgia, then they can shut up for another year. They don't have a Bama here. They don't have a Texas here. This is the year Mississippi can put up or shut up. And I have no predictions on that. I'm just relaying what I believe about Ole Miss. It's like, all right, cool, you're 6-0. If you're in such a bad scheduling spot where you're playing your 7th game in 7 weeks, LSU has 2 weeks to prepare, and you pull off that game, that will be, I don't care if you lose to Georgia, that will be very impressive. So Ole Miss has it all mapped out in front of them. We'll see what they bring to the table. Missouri, under 9.5 minus 150, over 9.5 plus 120. When I saw 9.5 for Missouri, I was like, what in the world? And it's like, first thing I had to think was, it's got to be scheduled, right? It's got to be scheduled, right? With a team like Missouri, like when Syracuse went 10-2, I don't like their staying power. A team like Missouri that might be a 5-6 win team, 7-8 is a great year, and then they pump up to that 11-2. I really don't like those teams to have staying power, and that was my first thought. I see them ranked number 8 in the country, and now, as I look at their schedule, I see how they can stay there. I do like Brady Cook, and his wide receivers are intact, but I think he like, I don't want to say overachieved, but I think he's like a little bit overhyped. I think he's a solid quarterback, good quarterback. Don't get me wrong, he's a real good quarterback, but I don't think he's like that great quarterback that we're looking for. Just not the type of team that reloads. That's what I think of. They have a new defensive coordinator. The top 3 tacklers on this team are off to the NFL on a pretty good defense. The portal has done them well. That's what I want to say about Missouri. I love, a lot of the information comes from this schedule. What to number 1 Georgia, number 3 Texas, number 6 Ole Miss, number 14 LSU, number 15 Tennessee all have in common? Not on Missouri's schedule. Georgia, number 1, not on the schedule. Texas, number 3, not on the schedule. Ole Miss, number 6, the 3 teams ranked ahead of them in the country, not on their schedule. LSU, Tennessee, are they all at home? No, not all at home, not all on the road, not a mixture of anything. None of these teams play Missouri. If Missouri, I could say the same thing about Missouri. Prove it this year. Alabama's not awesome. You played 2 top 20 teams all year. And yet you're still lined at under 9.5 minus 150 to lose 3 games. So let's look at their schedule to begin with. Murray State, not a competition, a Thursday night game. The first 4 games are at home, and then they have a week off. What a great schedule. Murray State, then Buffalo comes in, who's not even as of last year. You have to look at the MAC every year. MAC is not a good conference to begin with. Buffalo wasn't a great team in that conference. Boston College, a down ACC team, 4 or 5 wins. Vandy, a mess that we're going to talk about later. They're going to be fun to talk about, more fun than I thought before I started this SEC breakdown. Then they're off, so they have a week off, and then they go to Texas A&M. That's going to be a tough one. They might be an underdog in that game. I fully believe they'll be 4-0. They have 2 weeks to prepare. Now, this Texas A&M team now, they're lined at 8.5. We'll talk about them a little bit later, but they're at 8.5. And they're what? They're 15, 16. They're not, another unranked team. Then what happens? They come home and play UMass. And then they play Auburn. Auburn lined at 7.5. Teeter-totter team. Could go either way. Is it out of the realm of possibility for Missouri to be 7-0 when they go to Bama? With all the confidence in the world, go to Bama. And who knows where Bama's going to be? They're the question mark of all of this conference. Are they going to do the reload thing? I don't buy. I like DeBoer. I like them at the Alabama coach now. I like them at Washington. Not as much expectations. Alabama's always going to be expected to be in the playoffs, especially when it's at 12. Then they have a week off, so here we go. They had 2 weeks to prepare to go to Texas A&M. They got 2 weeks to prepare to play Oklahoma, who Missouri is probably, as I look at just like the team, as those 2 teams on the field, I believe is a better team. They go to South Carolina, they go to Mississippi State, and they go home for Arkansas. Missouri, I really down on Mississippi State right now, but we'll see what happens. South Carolina is more of a middling. Can they go to those 2 and both get wins there, and then come home for Arkansas? These are 3 not great teams at the end of the schedule. Missouri feels like a team that could slip up against one of those 3 teams, but If you take those three teams and give them a win, you take the four at the beginning, 7, UMass 8 right there. So now you're saying you're just going about whether you believe in Missouri and the consistency to get to over 9.5 wins, 9 wins. It feels like a high number, but when you look at their schedule, they have an SEC schedule where they play the 9th-ranked team in the country, who is on a teeter-totter about how good they are, no Saban, and you got number 18 Oklahoma, who I believe they are better than. This is just, I see now why they are aligned with so many wins. All right, let's go to the Vols, who are across the board, minus 120 at over 9, under 120, under 9 at minus 110. So, the first thing that jumps out a little bit to me is they miss Texas, they miss Mississippi, and they miss LSU. That's not bad, you know. It's not like Missouri, but no one is. But that's why they're over 9 minus 120, under 9 minus 110. Nico Lamaleva, solid quarterback they believe in. This is a quarterback they believe in. With Milton, they found out fairly quickly, well, within a month, that he's not their guy. He just wasn't that good. Just plain and simple. Just an okay. Although they have 3 offensive line starters returning, I like that. That's a good thing for them. Their depth at offensive line is questionable. So when they rotate in, so if one goes down, they can be a little iffy. Now we know that McCoy, their top receiver, had season-ending injury last year, and that did not help Milton. So that can only help as they go back. And this defensive line are going to punch some people in the face. So that's what we got with Tennessee. As we look at their schedule, Chattanooga. Okay, now Chattanooga, their football field, okay, rant alert. Their football field cost the Montana Grizzlies the national title when they played James Madison because they had netting under it. And that was a long time ago, and thank you, NCAA, for taking the national title game away from them from the FCS. But other than that, they never go to the playoffs in the FCS. They are nothing. It'll be their Super Bowl, and it will be like the 90s Super Bowl where they were all blowouts. NC State, though, comes in the following week. This is in a neutral place. This is in, where is it? Charlotte, North Carolina. Again, it's still going to be I believe it's going to be neutral. And I will look beforehand to make sure it's not 80% NC State fans. NC State, the highest ranked team on Syracuse's schedule. But they are out. I think they're below Florida State in terms of rankings in the ACC. They're number 13. So you're already got that tough little bit schedule. Then you got a team that totally, lost everybody last year in Kent State. We don't even have to talk about Kent State. It's the MAC. The MAC is not going to beat the SEC. I'm not worried about it. It is a sandwich game between NC State and Oklahoma. So I don't want to give 55 points or anything, but in what I like about that is maybe I would, because they're a blowout team, or if I think a team's a blowout team. But when they're in a sandwich spot, doesn't mean I'm going the other way. It just means that it tells me to get off and go to one of the other 700 games that are on that day. So then they go to Oklahoma, and they go travel to Oklahoma. These are prove-it teams. Tennessee, Oklahoma, Texas A&M, Auburn. A lot of these teams are, let's see what we got. So when you see a 9, and I only need 3 losses to go, or 3 losses to get to under 9, or get to the tie, and then find the 4th one, I don't know. And then they're off, and then they go to Arkansas, and as much as I'm probably going to talk down Arkansas when I preview them, they're still lined at what? 4.5 wins, under 4.5, so they're going to get 3 or 4 wins. So gonna have to really look at Arkansas to see if they can challenge anybody on in the SEC, not named Vanderbilt or Mississippi State. So we really want to look more into them. Then before Florida goes through their craziness, they might still have a little confidence left on October 12th. And it's a rival game. Florida Tennessee has always been a rival. So as much as I favor Tennessee over Florida, it's not out of the realm of possibility. Uh, and they won't look past Florida, so I don't have to worry about that. And then they get Bama coming in. So again, with Alabama, we'll see how they react under the first year coach. We've beat that down. Then they get a week off. Then they come home for Kentucky and Mississippi State. Is Tennessee going to go undefeated at home? I mean, take the Alabama game out. The rest, are they going to go undefeated at home? Maybe. Kentucky is like the flying the ointment of everything. They could challenge you, or they could go either way. I call them teeter-totter teams. Mississippi State, I'm really down on. I don't have a problem with that. But it is in the look-ahead spot. So if Tennessee is really good, I wouldn't want to be giving a lot of points to Mississippi State the week before they go play number one dogs. And then they finish with UTEP and at Vandy. So you want to get your 6 or 7 wins and count those last two. Because although Vandy, we'll talk about Vandy, but they're not beating Tennessee, I don't believe, unless there's injuries. So, again, no Texas, no Mississippi, no LSU can help Tennessee get to the net 9-win level. Nick Lamaleva, they really, really like. So if you're a believer in him, you could get some value on Tennessee, maybe winning more than 9. Maybe. If you can get an 8.5 well, 8.5 probably minus 140. It depends. Minus 130, maybe. Yeah. And that's why we go through this. We kind of talk these things out, and maybe there'll be one team out there that I like the over-under on. Now let's go to Auburn University. War Eagle. Back in 1987, they were War Chicken because they kicked a field goal to tie Syracuse, knowing that there was no overtime. But, that was Pat Dye. I guess I can let that go as a Syracuse fan. But I always think of their War Eagles, War Chicken. Sorry. But here, Auburn, what we got for real? Hugh Freeze, second year. Now, if you think they're a good team, or strike that, if you think he's a good coach, the second year with everything going in should be the year. Peyton Thorne, not exciting at quarterback. They got a lot of young freshmen, wide receivers coming in. From what I can see, they're unproven. The running backs, unproven. The offensive line, average. They got a new defensive coordinator. It feels like the defense can go either way with this. They avoid Ole Miss, yeah. As I look through their, I want to go through their schedule because I just don't see a lot of excitement with Auburn, and they're under 7.5, and I see why the under 7.5 is juiced at minus 145. The over 7.5 you can get plus money. So let's look. And then you look at their schedule. All right, not a bad start. They got 5 games, all at home. Right, all at home, including 2 SEC games. We got Alabama A&M. Now this is a team from a conference that even the best team in their conference is too afraid to play good teams in the FCS. So Alabama A&M won't be a problem. Cal, well, they lined at 3.5, 4 wins. If you can't beat Cal. And then New Mexico. Well, look more into New Mexico too. But, 3, I truly believe they'll be 3-0. Arkansas comes in. I'm down on Arkansas more than I am on Auburn. I mean, that's not exactly great confidence in Arkansas. Then Oklahoma comes in. Now, as much as I'm down on Oklahoma, I'm down on Oklahoma, who is a 7.5 win team for Oklahoma standards, not the last few years Auburn standard. And I go by the last few years because I know Auburn's had great teams, but the last handful of years for Auburn, Oklahoma's still been in the media eye. Auburn, not as much. So then I look at Georgia. I look at no chance against Georgia, and I'll tell you why. Uh, this is the 6th game in 6 weeks. I don't like that in any way, shape, or form. Dogs are obviously more talented and all that. Games in Georgia, so everything just lines up poorly. But on the flip side, on the 12th, they're off. They're off after the Georgia game, and then they go to Missouri. Now, Missouri's one of those higher teeter-totter teams, 8.5 wins. This is one like which one is the decent team. I mean, I could see Auburn at best at 5-1. More likely at 4-2, they could get upset or lose to Oklahoma. Also, those percentages tell me 4-2 maybe, and then this could be the connecting part of the season. At Missouri, that I think they'll be an underdog. At Kentucky, that as of right now they're not legitimately better than. Could be showing in terms of the win total what they're going to be. They come home for Vandy, then they have an off week, then they got Louisiana Monroe, and then they come home for Texas A&M. Texas A&M, a higher teeter-totter team, 8.5. They're at 8.5 minus 115. Not going to be a big favorite there. And then at Alabama, we've talked at length about Alabama. Going to Alabama, I would favor Alabama by 7 to 10 points by the time it's all said and done. So I see they avoid Alabama. They avoid Ole Miss. So they avoid 2 of the top 6 teams. They avoid Ole Miss. They avoid Texas. And they're just a team that I'm not excited about to bet on, to bet against. I want to see what they bring to the table as the year goes on. Could be off my betting card all the way for half the year just to see what they're going to be. Let's go to Oklahoma. Over 7.5 minus 125. Under 7.5 at minus 105. I am not really a fan of Venables, who came with this great defense stuff from Clemson. They got a new OC, Jackson Arnold at quarterback. We don't know yet. Wide receiver does have talent. Their offensive line is going to be a question. It just is. Running back, questions. Now, Oklahoma's defense was god-awful 2 years ago. They got to the average where it seemed like they'd always give up points, and then they'd have weeks of okay. They did get some help in the transfer portal. So there is that. That's what, you really got going for them. Their schedule is probably not conducive to them only losing 4 times. But let's go through it. They do avoid the dogs. But let's look at the beginning of the schedule. I like their first 3 games for a team with a question at quarterback, question at O-line. Will this stuff come together? They have the opportunity to have it come together. They start with 3 home games. They start with Temple, who the talent level is different. Houston, a 4-win team, a 4-win line team, who I don't think is going to be good. I think that's a good scheduling thing for Oklahoma. Third game is against Tulane, and Pratt, their quarterback, went to the NFL, so they got to replace that. And the reason I don't like Tulane as an upset team, even though they've been decent the last few years, is the whole team quit last year. I think they quit during the title game, and then they really quit in the bowl game. No one wanted to play. They had no school spirit. And school spirit matters down to teams like this. So a team that quit last year, I don't like them to come up and be like, okay, we're back. We want to play this year. I don't like seeing a team quit and then seeing them next year. So 3-0 is, I never say lock, but I really expect. Then comes Tennessee. It's comes into Oklahoma. Now we going to prove it? We're 18, they're 14. Let's go see. I have more respect for Tennessee and their talent level. Um, Although again, Tennessee's quarterback is new, but I believe in Lamaleva over Jackson Arnold. But where the immortal question for Oklahoma, I think they really like the guy in Tennessee. Then they go to Auburn. Now, I marked this down as like a week's sandwich game. I don't like to say Auburn as being a sandwich game. Tennessee at Auburn, then off, but then they had their big rival game. But they, after going to Auburn, they have a week off. So sandwich thing, not as cool. Um, but at Auburn, I mean, Oklahoma at Auburn, which one is the real team that can go over 7.5? That's what that feels like, and I'm not sure either one can. But then they have the week off, so they do have 2 weeks to prepare for Texas in Dallas, which is a neutral site game. I think Texas is the far superior team, but we have seen in this series the superior team get tested and beaten a lot more often than in other rivalries. So you can't take that as a loss. Then a true, without a doubt sandwich game against South Carolina. Why? Because they play number 3 Texas, rivalry game. You already got the letdown factor, but who's after South Carolina? They go to Ole Miss, number 6 in the country. You know, you got 2 top 6 teams, top 10 teams at least, preseason, and then there's South Carolina just sitting in the weeds. Oklahoma, a lazy noon game maybe. Would not want to bet on Oklahoma when they play South Carolina. Then after Ole Miss, they got Maine, who is a team that perennially never goes to the playoffs in the FCS. No problem there. At Missouri. Missouri, the question mark team. How good is Missouri? I think they're better than Oklahoma. I think their culture right now is better than Oklahoma. I think their coaching is better than Oklahoma. So then they're off, and then they go to Bama and go to LSU. That's a tough 4 out of 5 to end the season. At Ole Miss, it's not like Florida, but we'll get to Florida, don't worry. At Ole Miss, Maine, and then at Missouri, off, at Bama and at LSU. 4? Holy schmoobears, they're all on the road too. 4 road games against top 14 teams. Oklahoma at over 7.5. I don't believe. I can't. I think they're living off their name. Let's go on to Texas A&M. These guys avoid Ole Miss and the Dogs and Tennessee, but Mississippi and the Dogs. But that's not as big as a miss because they scheduled Notre Dame to start the year. Number 5 Notre Dame. Now the thing with this guy, new head coach Mike Elko. They've had 7 quarterbacks in the last 2 years, and that's why they haven't been at the level they hope to be. One of the reasons, at least. Connor Weigman at quarterback. 3 offensive line starters, but they're really iffy. Did the portal help? The portal must help these guys. Running back, unknown. Well, they'll be fine at wide receiver. Now what's his name? Did I even write his name down? Nick Scouton. He was the Big Ten sack leader last year. He was out of Purdue, and he transferred in. He can only help this defensive line. Linebackers and cornerbacks were a question, and it seems like they got a lot of portal help in that regard. So let's look at the schedule. Like I said, they avoid the Dogs, Mississippi, and Tennessee, but I almost like exit out Mississippi because they're non-conference. They got Notre Dame, so that ticks up their schedule. So they got Notre Dame to start with, and we're gonna do the Notre Dame preview when we do the Big Ten, which will be at the next thing we do. Um, so then they get McNeese State. Back in the day, where it was a good FCS school, hasn't been in the playoffs in forever, so you don't have to worry. You go to Florida. You go to Florida when Florida still might think they're good. Florida can definitely knock off Miami. And if they do that, they will still be in the right mindset. So your schedule, when you see strength of schedule, most things are ranked off of last year, so they're not real. But Texas A&M playing Florida on September 14th is a lot different than Florida playing Florida State at the end of the year. It's a totally different schedule. So you go to Florida as your first road game, and we'll talk about Florida, but it's not like this is a team that can just roll their helmets out and win by 10 or 7. So that's going to be an interesting one. They'll come home for Bowling Green. Don't care about the MAC. They suck. So then we come back to the 28th. They got Arkansas in a bit of a rival game. They always play at AT&T Stadium where Cowboys play. Arkansas, I believe, is down, but I keep saying that, but I'm gonna have to read through my notes again to see how far I really think they are down. And then October 5th is their 6th game in 6 weeks. Again, once it gets to 6, once it gets to 7, I don't like that. I think it's bad. Even though they're at home against Missouri, I think the scheduling of playing 6 games in 6 weeks could tick a little bit of a favor to Missouri. And I look at that as a toss-up game. They're off on the 12th, so they get 2 weeks to prepare for big old Mississippi State, but it's on the road. Now, Texas A&M is not a team that you can say they're going to win, they're going to win, they're going to win. I don't think they're that type of team. I think they're a team that could be upset. And look where, and it's like a sandwich spot. Number 8, Missouri. If Missouri's still there, which they are because they have a weak schedule, and then a week off. In the middle, they got at Mississippi State as they will look forward to LSU, who, a ranked LSU team, who they do have coming into their building. So they have enough of these games at home to value that we're not going to lose more than 3 deal going with Texas A&M, no matter how much of a question mark they are. So they go to South Carolina, again, iffy spots where upsets can happen. And then they're off on November 9th, and we look at New Mexico State, at Auburn, and then they end the season with Texas. A home game with Texas, but Texas is very talented, and we'll see how that plays out, which could be a look ahead. If Auburn's wheels come off, Texas A&M plays them right before Texas, but Auburn will have Alabama on deck, so yeah. So Texas A&M, 8.5. It feels high to me because I think they're a team that can be upset, and then playing number 5 Notre Dame, number 8 Missouri, all these, the Texas number 3. The saving grace that would probably keep me off any kind of total is they have a lot of these step-up games at home. Despite the scheduling spot with Missouri being the 6th game in a row, they are playing them in Kyle Field. So it'd be really interesting to see how they play out. All right, let's get to the Kentucky Wildcats over 6.5, over 6.5 minus 120, under 6.5 minus 110. So they're about, even money. Will they win 7 games or not? Now Brock Vandergriff is the unknown. He comes in at quarterback. This guy was backing up at Georgia, so Georgia liked him at one time. So, they got to be excited about their quarterback there. The offensive line is definitely a concern. New offensive coordinator, definitely, under Mark Stoops. I don't know. I believe that they'll have enough talent at the wide receiver and uh, running back position. They were number two in the SEC versus the run last year, and that's always good. If you can stop the run, you can. I mean, they were in I believe, a lower scoring game for a long time with Georgia, keeping themselves in the game. Uh, the defense is pretty good. They have a shutdown corner in Hairston who had 5 picks last year. So defense could be pretty good. There's a lot of questions all over the place here, but they think they got their quarterback. Can they bring that offensive line together? That's going to be the key when they look at their schedule. They play teams Southern Miss to start the year. South Carolina comes in, then Georgia, and then a big sandwich with Ohio in the middle of a Georgia at Ole Miss sandwich. Kentucky just can't go out there and say we're going to beat these teams at home. We're going to beat South Carolina, maybe Southern Miss. Look more into them, but South Carolina is not a win. It's not a loss. I'm not saying they're a loss. I'm not even going to say it's a toss-up. They might be a favorite. But when they play South Carolina, they could be looking ahead to Georgia. And then when we're playing Ohio, they could be looking past that to Ole Miss. And they're just not a team that can do that. So when I look through their first 5 games, 3-2 maximum. Not going to beat the Dogs, not going to beat Ole Miss. Southern Miss is kind of a question mark. I don't like MAC teams, so even though it's a sandwich, you just don't want to give too many points with Kentucky, probably. And then South Carolina, that's no gimme for a team like Kentucky. They have a week off, and they play Vandy, who we'll talk about Vandy and why I think they're so horrid. And this is next level. Anyway, then they go to Florida October 19th. Not going to be favored in that game. Florida, November schedule looming. They need every win they can get if they want a bowl game. Then they come home for Auburn. Auburn's one of those teeter-totter 7.5 at Tennessee. I don't like them there. And then they have a week off, and then they get Murray State. And then they go at Texas, and then come home for who they're not going to beat, and then come home for Louisville, which is a team that's lined at 8.5, a team that's going to be considered better than them at this point. So getting to 7 wins, I wouldn't. 6 to 7 wins I think this is lined correctly. I think they'll be one of those middling teams. Can they come up and bite someone? Maybe a Florida on the road. Who they got at home though? I mean, they got Louisville. They could, of course, rivalry game. Anything could happen. They can't bite the Dogs. I mean, Southern Miss, South Carolina, Ohio. Yeah, they could go 3, and then Vandy, and then Auburn is more of a toss-up. So this seems like a team that's been lined correctly. Has a lot of questions, but if the quarterback comes on, the offensive line comes together, they could be a decent team. But there's a lot of questions for Kentucky Wildcats. South Carolina seems like we've talked a lot about during this preview. South Carolina, we look at under 5.5 wins, minus 120. Over 5.5 wins, minus 110. So about even. And I want to throw a shout out to someone who commented on Facebook Live with one of my last videos, who said he liked my movie, and I said thank you. He also said it's June. It's like, yeah, it's June. Let's get our minds wrapped around who's playing, get our mind who's actually in the conference, because it's way better than just waiting to see who the Yankees are going to play in the playoffs, even though Baltimore replaced them as the first place team. Anyway, this is the SEC, South Carolina. All right, so yeah, so the head coach Shane Beamer, who's going to get fired, right? The team's been in regression. That's what I don't like about South Carolina. That's right. That's why I'm like, the new quarterback Lenore Sellers, maybe to start the season, but he might not last. Redshirt freshman. And let's look at this. They had Rattler at quarterback, who's fine. He was at Oklahoma, and he was good. I mean, he was good. I mean, we have this culture in America now that says you either are the best of all time or you suck. But he was a solid quarterback, especially for South Carolina, and they still only ran for 80 yards a game with Rattler at quarterback, a good quarterback. Now they have a uh, complete different quarterback that maybe he'll step up, maybe it'll be a different one that is just well unknown. And when you have the offensive line that's a question mark, that's not a good combination. I look for this defense to struggle. I mean, their secondary improved as the season went on. Now, when I say that, the defense still struggled, and the team is regressing under Shane Beamer. I look at this team as going in the wrong direction. So when I look at 5.5, I can only look under if I did anything at all. Anything at all, I could only look under because the coach and the team is regressing. Now, it doesn't mean I'm going to make that bet, but it's like, sometimes you eliminate a bet. I'm eliminating over 5.5 with all the questions and the regression. So they start with Old Dominion, who can give you a scare. They have been a decent team that has given higher conference teams scares. So this, I mean, they could overlook this. I don't think they will because it's the first game of the season, and I don't think teams overlook first games of the season. But, when it's a team like South Carolina, you get this Old Dominion team to surprise them, then you're loving your under 5.5. All right. And then we look at, then they go to Kentucky. Probably not going to be favored in that game. That's going to be a bit of a toss-up, a little edge to Kentucky. Then LSU. LSU comes in as 14th ranked team in the country, not a good thing. Akron, a perennially, can never use that word, bad team in the MAC. Akron should get a win there. Then they're off, so they got 2 weeks to prepare as Ole Miss comes in. They're going to make that can be their Super Bowl. Now, if they get that win, I just don't think they can, but if they do, then look out for them talking bowl. But they got Ole Miss, then they got at Alabama and at Oklahoma. I think they're outclassed in all of those games. I just think they are. Then they're off, so they get 2 weeks to prepare for Ole Miss that comes in, which I don't think will help them. But here, they got 2 weeks to prepare, and then they have Texas A&M come in, and that's a great. That's good. That can be a good spot for South Carolina. Maybe that's one that they nab that we don't expect them to. And then there's the letdown sandwich galore when they go to Vandy. I would not give a lot of points for South Carolina as they're coming off a Texas A&M game that I think they'll be up for after preparing for 2 weeks. Then the next game is Missouri coming in. Right now, number 8 team, probably a good team going forward. And then you got at Vandy as a sandwich. So don't give too many points. And if this team is not figuring it out at quarterback, if their offensive line is in shambles, maybe Vandy could shock the world. And then there's Wofford, who is not a playoff team, has been a playoff team for a while. Don't even know if they still have that tricky offense. Then they go to Clemson, who is a rival, but I don't think Clemson will be wanting to play them. Even if their year didn't turn out like they wanted to, it's a bit of a rival, and I don't like South Carolina there. Can I see this team with 6 wins? Not really. If you give them Old Dominion, Akron, and Vandy, and Wofford, if you give them those 4, they still got to find 2 more. Are they going to go winless in the SEC? Probably not. Well, outside of Vandy. But they are. Who are they playing in conference? At Kentucky, a road game. LSU comes in. Mississippi comes in. At Bama. At Oklahoma. Texas A&M comes in. So I would lean towards an under. I might even talk myself into an under as the months lead up to the season come. So That could be something actually look into. All right. Oh snap! My people in Fayetteville, Arkansas, are probably gonna hate me after this, but we gotta go with what we know. Get these flies out of here. Okay. How desperate is Arkansas? And we're going to do a little rant alert here. How desperate is Arkansas? They have decided, okay, this is Sam Pittman's last season as head coach, in my opinion, when they go 4-8 or whatever they go. And maybe Petrino will take over. They hire Petrino as offensive coordinator. Look at how he was released. I'm not going to hash over the details, and there's going to be like just little talks about, oh, who cares? Everyone does that. No. There's a lot more to his story for him ever getting a job. And the really funny thing is, because I live here in Springfield, Missouri, or next to Missouri, but in Springfield, Missouri, there is a team called Missouri State. And they either were going to take a guy that basically covered up murders by his players, or this guy, Petrino. Briles or Petrino. That's how desperate Missouri State was to get a winning football program. That's what they thought it took. They went with Petrino. And I saw in September, oh, look, they're ranked 6th in the country. Never a playoff berth to be found. He failed at Missouri State. He failed at Missouri State. Okay, North Dakota State, South Dakota State, whatever. Why can't you be the South Dakota? Why can't you be the third best team in your conference? Because he's a joke. But he is a good offensive coordinator. He fails at Arkansas, quits on the Falcons, I believe. He quits on everywhere he's ever gone. He's been a quitter, but he is a good offensive coordinator. But this is how desperate Arkansas is, because they have no clue how to build a program. They're going to go Petrino, and then he'll probably be head coach next year, and they'll be satisfied going 7-5, 8-4 in this conference, which is the absolute max they can be if they get a Missouri-type schedule. But let's look at them on the field now. So Pittman's gone. Petrino shows the desperation. So far, we're looking at what? Taylon Green at quarterback. Now, I think this will improve. They will improve at quarterback if Taylon Green does not quit. If whoever they pick at quarterback doesn't quit. The quarterback last year was good. He was there for a bunch of years, but finger pointing, body language from November on, Arkansas, their whole offense, I don't even want to say their defense, their whole offense quit. I saw them in a 7-3 game at home. I don't remember who it was against, but it wasn't a top 25 team. And they quit. In front of their own fans, they quit. When you get a team that has thrown in the towel and they still have the same head coach and their desperation of Petrino, the problem with Petrino is it's his first year. If it's his second year, I might have a little better understanding on how they can get to a bowl game. But their defensive coordinator is in their second year. I believe their defense is not going to be the best of all time. It's going to be bad. So when I see under 4.5 at -140, I'm like, why are they juiced? Yeah. When I see under 4.5 at -140, I can see why. I agree with why they are juiced at -140 to go under. So they open up on a Thursday against big bad Arkansas Pine Bluff. Again, one of those bad teams in a conference in the FCS where the good teams in that conference do not like to challenge themselves and then like to play in a fake championship game and not go to the playoffs. 2014 playoff now. Uh, so they're in a really weak league and they're a weak team. No shot. At Arkansas. I mean, Arkansas has some talent. I mean, they do have two offensive two offensive linemen who return. Plus, they're going to need the portal to pan out, and it could be a little bit better. After Pine Bluff, they go to Oklahoma State. Oklahoma State's one of those middling teams, decent teams, plays well at home teams, top 20 team. I don't like their chances there. UAB, Alabama, Birmingham. Okay, should be fine there. At Auburn, I believe Auburn's going to be a better team this year. I don't see that happening. Texas A&M, this is a neutral site game, as we talked about a little bit earlier, but I don't think their talent level is going to be there. Who knows if Taylor Green is going to be the starter. So far, as of June 26th, but are they going to play musical chairs? Are they going to go until Petrino finds his guy? Then we go Tennessee. Tennessee comes into Arkansas. Again, the talent different. I believe there's going to be talent differentials against Arkansas a lot. Then they have a week off. And by the way, let me see. Yes, this Tennessee game is not a good setup because once it gets to 6 to 7 consecutive weeks that you play a football game, I think a college athlete gets tired. So I think it'll be a bad scheduling spot for Arkansas, which is not good since the Tennessee is already better than Arkansas. Then they have an off week, and then another home game against another good team, 14th ranked LSU. And again, I mean, they used to be a fake rival at the end of the year, but now they're just the 14th ranked team in the country. Then there's a sandwich spot at Mississippi State because you got number 14 LSU at Mississippi State, the sandwich game, because Ole Miss will be on deck. Now, do sandwiches look ahead for bad teams really matter as much? Maybe not. But there's not a lot that says they're way better than Mississippi State. They have to show up and try and be interested. And since there's been a history under this coach of quitting, as we get later in the schedule, I don't like their chances. So when they go to Mississippi State, I'm not excited. When they come home, play the number 6 team, they're already the worst team. Are they on quit alert? And they quit at home in that game, by the way, as they lost 7-3. Then November 9th, they're off. Then they're home for Texas, which used to be a rival, but they're far superior, Texas is. Louisiana Tech, another sandwich game because they got at Missouri to end it. So Arkansas getting to 5 wins, I see why the minus 140 is on them to go under. Could they be just laying the groundwork? Petrino gets in, and then maybe the quarterback matures next year, and they get to, and depending on the schedule, of course, get to 6, 7, 8 wins next year. Maybe that's what they're trying to do. But as of this year in the vacuum, it's going to be a long, long year in Fayetteville. Hey, but I'll root for them. It's going to be very hard, though. All right. Florida, my favorite one. The one team that when I was doing the ACC and was going over Florida State, then I looked and said, okay, looking at their schedule, I was like, Florida State, Florida, oh. Then I looked up Florida's schedule and I was like, oh my gosh. Before I even get to anything of Napier being 11-14, let me read you off after they are off on October 26th. This is the last 5 games of the year. 5 weeks in a row. Georgia, number 1 in the country. That's a neutral site game in Jacksonville. At number 3, Texas. Back home for number 14, LSU. Back home for number 6, Mississippi. And then at Florida State, number 11. If there's I challenge you, anyone out there, challenge, write in the comments. Whenever you see this video, anytime, I will show me a 5-game block. You can even throw a bye in there. You got to remember, they don't even have a bye. and they're playing 3 top 6 teams preseason. Show me a tougher gauntlet than that to end the season. But let's look into this team. Graham Mertz is back. Yeah, the Wisconsin guy who's 75 years old now. Heck yeah, he's back. And still average. Okay. 72% completions, showing that he throws the ball 2 to 3 yards downfield. 20 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. Good. He doesn't turn the ball over, so he gives you a chance. He doesn't make plays. 20 touchdowns over 12 games, but he doesn't really make plays. But he can check down Charlie, and he doesn't turn the ball over much. So that's a plus. If you can hold out and hope the other team makes more mistakes, that's a thing. That was always a thing at Wisconsin. Skill talent is average at best, especially when you rank their skill talent in the SEC. Again, at best, they're okay. They're average at offensive line. 22 sacks led up last season. You know, for Florida to make any more gains, they have to be like an explosive offense. Because the last 5 games of the year, now, is this because there's some quit going on? 38 points a game. Napier, 11-14 in 2 seasons here. The 3rd season should be the breakout season, and they're lined at 4.5 wins. Don't care how tough the schedule is. When you're Florida, you should be in a bowl game. 7-5. But let's look at their schedule from top to bottom now. They open on August 31st. Now, this is like a tale of 2 schedules almost, because Florida will be in the mindset, which is huge in college football, having the right mindset. And you can see on my channel, on my YouTube channel, I go over psychology. Miami is their opening. They'll be sky high. Miami comes into their place, the 25th ranked team in the country, a team they could beat. I mean, they have crystal ball at coach. You can always win as long as the coach on the other side of the field is crystal ball. You can always win. He doesn't know how to kneel. He doesn't think that the kneel down play exists. And besides that, he's still bad. He's got more talent than Florida, but it would not shock anyone if Florida won that game. Then they got Samford. I believe. No, that was basketball. I'm not sure. They were, I believe, a borderline playoff team that didn't make it. In the FCS, shouldn't be a problem. The talent differential should be there. And then the 3rd home game to open the season is Texas A&M, a team they're not as good as, a team lined at 8.5 wins. I don't like their chances there. I don't believe it's not even the swamp anymore. There's none of this. They gotta go to the swamp. Ooh, they're not scared. I don't see them winning both Miami and Texas A&M. And then they go to Mississippi State, a team that is down this year. Over 3.5 wins at -165. Florida, by the way, is over 4.5 -150, under 4.5 +120. So they're favored to win 5 games. If you bet them to win 4.5, you gotta give up juice. So look at those first 4: Miami, Stanford, Texas A&M, and at Mississippi State. You can make a medium to light argument that they can be 4-0. That means they went on the road and won a game, and they beat Miami lined at 9.5 wins, and Texas A&M lined at 8.5 wins. For me, I'm looking at 3-1 maximum. Would my prediction be 2-2? I can't, because I think they'll beat Stanford and find a way to get by Mississippi State. But you can never bet on crystal ball. So I could still. It wouldn't shock me if they were 2-2. It wouldn't shock me if they were 1-3. But they better get as many wins as they can early. They have a week off, so they got 2 weeks to prepare for UCF, who's going to be sky high for every game, going everywhere. And then so that's going to be a look. So it's going to be UCF, big game. Florida overlooking them, easily could overlook them because they're going to Tennessee on October 12th. So as we look at that, so they're at Tennessee. Then they come home for Kentucky. Now Kentucky's the fly in the ointment. They're always a fly in the ointment. Kentucky, if I'm not mistaken, has beaten them 2 or 3 years in a row after losing 100 years in a row to them, roughly. So not a gimme. And that's the thing with Florida. Outside of Stanford, I don't see the gimme. Like at Mississippi State, not really a gimme. So Kentucky. So now you're at Kentucky. Okay, what is the absolute best scenario that they could have? Could they be four? Could they have only one loss going into October 26th? I can't see them being 6-1, 4-3 maximum maybe. Uh, yeah, but let's look at the last five again because they have a week off, 2 weeks to prepare for Georgia in a neutral field. Florida is not beating Georgia, even if they somehow challenge them. They're not beating Georgia. They're not going to go to Texas and beat Texas. Now they come home for Mississippi or for LSU, then Mississippi. Okay, these are home games. Now the question you got to ask after playing at Tennessee, Kentucky, week off, Georgia, Texas. Now we're at the last 3 games of the season. Where's their mindset? Do they have 4 wins? Or are they like 5-5, or 6-3? Are they going to be 4-5? I mean, 4-5 is like best case scenario, and you hope they take out one of these teams. As we see them play Georgia, and then at Texas, and then LSU. By the time they get to Ole Miss, you've got to believe they're beat up. I mean, they're not going to lose 2 in a row, LSU and Ole Miss. Beg to differ. At Florida State, with Graham Mertz at quarterback, if he survives, a very average offensive line. I would like, if I was like could rearrange their schedule, I'd almost put like UCF or Samford, Mississippi State, UCF, Miami to try to get them confidence. I don't know how much confidence they're going to have as they go down. And then say UCF or someone pulls an upset, Mississippi State pulls an upset. As I see an under 4.5 at plus 120, that tells me that maybe 5, maybe even up to 5.5, I could get an under 5 at even money. And I would seek that out as I do my research through the summer for the Florida Gators. So Florida was a really fun one once I saw their November schedule. I challenge anyone out there to find 5 games in a row that's as tough as Georgia at Texas, LSU, Ole Miss, and at Florida State. Now we look at the 2 worst teams. Mississippi State, I didn't even want to do, but, looking into Vandy, I didn't want to do them, but I love looking into them now. So over 3.5 minus 165, under 3.5 plus 135. They got new head coach. They got a new head coach with Jeff Libby. Blake Shapen at quarterback. That could be a good thing. He's a Baylor transfer, decent. They do not have any proven players on offense. This team is at ground zero. The top 8 defensive players, gone. The SEC leading tacklers, gone. This is just a fresh new thing. This is a team I don't want to have anything to do with until I see what's going on. Scraping up information on Mississippi State, can't. So let's go through their schedule because I just want to rip through them. Eastern Kentucky. Eastern Kentucky is a borderline FCS playoff team. Used to winning a little bit. Will be their Super Bowl. At Arizona State, a team that's lined in the same like them, but they are like them, so there are no wins on this season. Home against Toledo, perennial MAC team that's good. I would not want to hitch my wagons to them winning that game for sure. Then Florida, before Florida gets beat up, not happy. And then at Texas, that's a loss. at Texas. Then they're off. 2 weeks to prepare to go to Georgia. Good luck with that. And then Texas A&M, Arkansas, and UMass. Can they get 2 wins out of that? They could, because they can beat UMass, and they could take out Arkansas if they find a. This is a team that I want to see if their offense can take off with Blake Shapen, the quarterback. Can they get some proven players? That's why it's like I don't have to bet. There's 1,000 games to bet on. I don't have to do Arizona State or Mississippi State games. After UMass, they go to Tennessee. Then they're off. Then they're home from Missouri, and they're at Ole Miss. Mississippi State is a big question mark. I need more information. Look through the summer about this team. I can't give a judgment on over 3.5, under 3.5. I can say that you could probably get over 4.5 at what? No, you can get an under 4.5 at even money if you're really against them. But this is a team I don't have a lot to say on, so let's just move on. I didn't want to be like I did every team in the SEC except Mississippi State, so that's my stuff on Mississippi State. It's not the most, but there you go. Now, Vanderbilt, the one we've all been waiting for. This team is a friggin' mess, and they're not always a friggin' mess. So, over 2.5 at minus 190, under 2.5 at plus 150. I think you get a plus. You can get an under 3.5 at even money, and that might be the better bet. So, the head coach believes that him coaching the defense will automatically improve the defense. I put an LOL next to that. I'm just like, okay. The head coach, Clark Lee, defensive guy, so I already don't like it because I believe to win, when you're this type of team, you need to score points. You're going to eventually, no matter how good you can make your defense, are going to break. He fired basically the whole staff. And he brought in an offensive coordinator, I forgot his name, who has a super difficult offense to learn. Now maybe in a year, in 2 years, it'll be easier to grasp going forward. It reminds me of Jed Fish at Arizona, where the first year it might be hard to grasp, but as the years go along, he'll be fine. But the second and third year, they'll really have a chance on offense. This really scares me because you're putting in an offense that they know nothing about. You got an unathletic offensive line to begin with, and now you have them trying to think. I think this is going to be awful, especially when you look at the schedule like Georgia State. In the third game, it's like maybe that's a team you thought you could beat, but they're not, there's no games here where you go, maybe we can get through this as we're learning the system, especially being Vanderbilt. Their top 4 wide receivers. We know Vanderbilt's not a good team to begin with, but their top 4 wide receivers transferred out. Altitude out, as they say. They got a poor defense, and people were transferring out from the defense. I'm not sure about this coach and if he's going in the right direction. Or he just said, okay, I'm cleaning house, we're already horrible, we're going down to ground zero. We're going to put my offensive coordinator, we're going to take our lumps, we're going to get throttled in every game, but we're going to learn an offense that's going to be really effective in college football. Now, if we buy that, that doesn't gain us anything this particular year in a vacuum. So let's look at their schedule, which I don't see that third win, but if I could get under 3.5 at even money, I would feel good. So they open at home against Virginia Tech. number 21 in the country, decent team. We've gone over them in the ACC. Uh, Lined at 8.5 wins, I believe. Uh, you never know what can happen early in the year. I'll give you that. When you're at home, and your mindset, again, your mindset is as clear as it's going to be at the top. So open up with a good, not awesome team. Could be okay. I'd rather that they played Alcorn State first and then give them a chance against Virginia Tech. But I'm not sure they're going to be able to handle what Virginia Tech has for them. In their second game, Elkhorn State. Now, Elkhorn State is a team that never goes to the FCS playoffs. One of the reasons is they're not good enough. Another reason is they're in one of those conferences again where they want to pretend to be a champion by playing in a fake bowl game against another league that doesn't want to challenge themselves. That rarely have teams ranked in the top 25 of FCS. They just decide to have two champions play each other and not challenge them in any playoffs. And it's probably a good thing because almost every single year these MEAC and SWAC teams will get absolutely throttled in the first round of the playoffs when there were 16 teams. Now there's 24 teams. You give them an automatic bid. Now you got more bad teams in the playoffs. So it's actually a good thing that you take two bad teams out of the playoffs and put them into FCA and put them in their own little let's pretend like we're good teams. Anyway, this is not one of those teams. They should not have a problem. Talent differential even should be fine. That's another thing I wanted to bring up. Unknown at quarterback. The quarterbacks are super weak. They averaged 3 yards a carry last year. Yeah. And with this unathletic offensive line, with this new offense coming in, this team is going to be a total mess. And, it's like, oh, wait, you're saying Vandy sucks? So of course they are. It's like, no, it's not like before where they could be. You could look and see the TV and see 17-10 or 10-3 in the second quarter. I don't think you're going to see a lot of that this year, where it's 20-13 in the third quarter. Oh, Vandy held for a while. I don't think they're going to hold for a while in many games. They go to Georgia State, a decent team for their conference. I don't think this is an easy game at all. I would have to look more at Georgia State. But like I say, when we go through, I'll even give you this as a win. I don't see a fourth win, and they're over 2.5 at -190 here at Battle 9. You can get a 3.5 at even money somewhere else, I believe. So at Georgia State, you can call it a win, and it's also a road game. At Missouri, not happening. Then they're off, so they get 2 weeks to prepare for Bama. We've talked about Bama a lot, but we know the talent differential. They go to Kentucky, who this could be like bowl stuff. Like, we better beat these guys if we're going to go to a bowl. Then they got Ball State at home. This hasn't been the best MAC team. So we're going to count that as a win for them. But, if you look up and it's 20-14 with 8 minutes to go in the game, don't be shocked. Because there's only one game that they're going to win, Elkhorn State. And then the rest, I don't buy it. And you could say this would be the second one. I don't think Georgia State. But then Texas, no. I mean, Texas is going to, go in there. They go to Auburn. Again, Auburn is lined at 7.5. They're going on the road to Auburn. And Auburn, depending on the season, one way or another, they're going to need this for a bowl, or they're going to need this to be a little better as they grow. South Carolina. Now, here's another bad scheduling spot for Vandy. So if you want to take South Carolina at Vandy, especially if South Carolina is kind of down, like we said, and they're only given 7 or something like that, this is Vanderbilt's 6th game in 6 weeks. So, horrible scheduling spot. Don't think they will win that game. Then they're off, and then they go to LSU and come home for Tennessee. Now, this head coach is a defensive coordinator. So he has no one he can trust. He brings in an offense that's going to be very difficult to learn. And That difficult to learn offense is in the Virginia Tech game, Elkhorn State game, Georgia State game, Missouri. Before they, their first 4 games are still learning their offense. That's why if I look up and see Georgia State has a lot of starters, I could definitely see Georgia State winning that game. But let's say, for argument's sake, you give them Elkhorn State, Georgia State, and Ball State. Where's that 4th win? And that's given Georgia State. And it's like, the only argument I can give for another win is South Carolina, and that's a horrible scheduling spot with their 6th road game in a row. So if I could get under 3.5 at even money, I might jump all over that with Vandy as the month goes by. I haven't made any official bets yet. I did an earlier video today about the bet I did for today, June 28th, and you can check that out in another video. So there is the SEC breakdown preview. Georgia, Texas, I believe, will end up being the class of this, and then I'm really, really interested, not rooting either way, on Mississippi. I just want to report what happens with Mississippi. They got their step-up games. They got a schedule that they can use. They got the schedule and Georgia. Maybe they'll be the one that has 2 losses and be a 10 seed and a team you don't want to play in the playoff. We'll see how it all plays out. But the SEC was a lot of fun breaking down. We've been here for almost an hour, 46 minutes, so I guess that's enough. Come join us at SportsBooks.com. We're going to have a lot of different stuff up on the site. We do not sell picks. We will bring you a ton of content on my YouTube channel. Come join me. I'll try not to make videos this long anymore. We'll see you in the next video, and let's make money.